What does biochar have to do with this orange? On today's episode of the Biochar Show, we spotlight how Florida's citrus crisis is becoming a proving ground for place-based carbon removal. Through partnerships between Biotech Applied Research, 3 Degrees, and a network of farmers, universities, state agencies, and policymakers in site-based mobile biochar practices, one innovative team is turning waste into resilience. One grove, one burn, and one community at a time. With that, let's introduce our show guests. First up is Zack Farr, CEO of Biotech Applied Research in Central Florida. He's a third-generation citrus farmer turned biochar innovator. One thing that stands out in this interview is Zack's deep sense of land stewardship and his rooted connection to his family's farming, the history behind it, and the optimism around opportunities for all the future generations to follow in that land. Zack turned a career rooted in agriculture into a mission for rural regeneration. Now he is leading Florida's highest visibility mobile biochar program. Zack and his dedicated team transformed decimated citrus trees into soil restoring biochar. His work connects farmers, universities, policymakers, and carbon markets to rebuild Florida's rural economy and deliver generational impact. And then we have Wyatt Catron at 3 Degrees. Wyatt and his dedicated team support biochar projects to access revenue in carbon markets. They manage monitoring, reporting, verification, and sales for durable carbon removals on behalf of their project partners. Wyatt educates corporate clients on the science and ranging benefits of these projects while facilitating credit purchases. Their work has included listing the first 4 projects under the Climate Action Reserve's biochar protocol. That's a big deal. And alongside this work, 3 Degrees also strives to bring the voices of the biochar industry to carbon registries and credit buyers to align outcomes and support for industry-wide success. In this episode, Wyatt shares his why and his clear sense of optimism around biochar for climate resilience. With that, I know you're going to enjoy today's show. It was really a fantastic conversation, and here you go as we jump into this conversation of what biochar has to do with oranges. All right, Zack. So Zack and Wyatt, let's get this conversation going. This is going to be a lot of fun today, and looking forward to learning more about how biochar, citrus greening, carbon credits, how all this works together to provide a solution for generational farmers for land management and land stewardship. So, Zack, how about we start with you today? And what we'll look for is, how is it that you came to learn about biochar? And even before that, let's talk about the problem of citrus greening so our audience understands what that really is.
Sure, John. Appreciate the opportunity. We're at a cusp of something interesting here in Central Florida, and after learning about biochar, realizing that we have the same challenges in the agriculture communities across the United States, where disease is wiping out economies, wiping out commodities that support rural communities. In Central Florida, this entire region was founded upon the citrus industry. And since, I'm a third-generation citrus farmer, born and raised in Central Florida. And back in the day, you'd wake up, you could smell the orange blossoms in springtime, like the typical story where it was a thriving industry. 2004, 900,000 acres. Farmers were making a couple $1,000s an acre profit growing a tree. So money actually grew on trees. 2004 is actually when they found the greening in Central Florida. And since then, my father, I can say with confidence, he's one of the best citrus growers, arguably in, the United States. Very hardworking man. And he always went to conferences explaining that what you get in is what you get out. So ironically, a lot of the challenges that we have now with water quality in Florida is due to the fact that the decline of the citrus industry was resulting through more fertilizers, more inputs, more herbicide and insecticide, because we were trying to keep these trees healthy. Lo and behold, fast forward to 2020, we started growing industrial hemp as a replacement crop. And it's still very challenging to grow anything else on the ridge of Central Florida due to the fact that it's 90% sand. And in one particular area, a couple years later, our hemp plants grew 12 feet tall in 60 days. And so we did some soil tests, sent the soil test to a lab, and realized that the hemp plants are growing on an old burn pile. And a lot of other growers in this region had drone footage that showed that where burn piles were, citrus trees were drastically more healthy. And that's when we learned about biochar, was through that divine intervention. Like, why are these plants so tall? What is carbon in the soil called? Oh, there's actually a word for it. It's called biochar. Then everybody looks into the terra preta and how it was found, and the Amazon rainforest. And I've been trying to find a revenue generating opportunity for the dead trees for almost a decade. And I'm only sad that we didn't have this conversation a year ago, because it'd be exciting to see where we're going to be next year with the amount of accomplishments that we've had and trials and tribulations. And that's how we started in this biochar industry, is by growing industrial hemp on old citrus burn piles.
It's quite a coincidence, right? All of a sudden you're noticing, hey, what's turned up here? And now you've got this enhanced growth. You're not sure why, you figure it out, and then you go down that rabbit hole that so many of us have gone through. Zach, I want to clarify real quick. So when you have a piece of citrus, explain to the audience exactly what happens either to this or to the tree when greening is taking place.
Yeah, so actually, can I show you?
Yeah.
All right, let me show you. So, because I'm here on the job site, there's the machine, but this tree has a disease. So a bug will eat on the leaves, which I might be able to find. And it causes a bacteria. The bug is called the Asian citrus psyllid, and it causes a bacteria that goes down to the root system, and there's no cure for that tree's disease for it. So it's caused by a little tiny bug.
And it's effectively fatal for the tree once it happens.
It is fatal. It's a lot like AIDS for a human, where the more you put in, the healthier you could be for amount of time. But when you got any type of stress, hurricanes, weather, lack of nutrients in the soil, it's a perfect storm for chaos, unfortunately. University of Florida, the state, Senator Albright, they've injected a lot of money, and they recently did this year for farmers to grow an additional year, $200 million. So there's hope, new feedstocks. And I'm hoping that with everything that we're doing as a collaborative biochar community, we can get more proof in the pudding for Florida to understand that in order to grow, it's just not about the inputs. It's about what's already going on in those soils.
What percentage of the existing citrus crops in Florida have been affected by this?
There's not a tree in Florida that is outside that does not carry the disease.
Oh, that is rough.
If you got protection, like citrus under protection, there's these bags, but as soon as you take the bags off when they're like 3 years old, bug will literally fly to a dead grove and hang out while they're applying the insecticide, and when the insecticide is done, it'll fly back to the healthy grove.
Yeah, it's driven production down by about 90% since its origination in 2004, as Zach mentioned.
Yeah, so I bought this today at the grocery store. It cost me like $1.50 for one orange. So I know, well, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
And it probably didn't come from Florida like it used to. It probably used to come from Florida, and it probably doesn't anymore.
It didn't say on the label where it came from. Just said the brand name, and that was it, barcode. Zach, I want to get a little bit into how it is that the biochar itself is going to help in the restoration process, the mitigation process. Will the citrus crops come back, or do you think it's an issue of moving to other crops and waiting for the insect to go away in the disease vector and then coming back to citrus in the future?
There's a game of chess being played at the state, which we're all very appreciative of, is right now in this region, which benefits us as the mobile biochar company, is if you clear your grove, you have a 10-year ag exemption. So you get to keep your property taxes at agriculture standards, which I think is like 2 figures a year for your property taxes if you clear your grove. If you don't clear your grove, you are removed from the ag exemption. So then you're paying like $300 an acre. And if you have, 10 acres, 1,000 acres, either way, you're either paying $30 or $3,000. So that's great. They allow you to grow cattle on it or hay or something. You can't build houses, of course. University of Florida has some new feedstocks that we're cautiously optimistic about. And they're also doing citrus under protection, which are these massive greenhouses. It's just, we're in Hurricane Alley, one hurricane, and the $100,000 per 10 acres or $10,000 per acre of capital to build this greenhouse blows away. Right now, it's kind of like if you show up to Disney World to work and it's closed. So it's not like Disney World is closed, but Disney World, the buses, the food vendors, the janitors, and it's the same concept here in Central Florida where it's like we have all the resources. It's just that the tree is not making money anymore. We can't give up on the entire commodity, the industry, the packing houses, the millions of square footage of infrastructure that's currently available, the research and knowledge, the $4 billion that we've already put into finding a cure for a once upon a time $9 billion industry. And the guys at Florida Natural asked me once, like, how do we get the younger generation involved to keep people drinking orange juice? And I was like, it's simple, as long as people are drinking OJ with champagne, like we're going to have a market. But it's just like, you got to get creative and survive. It's a game of survival right now. And there is still a lot of hope in this region, a lot of hope. And I say that, honestly, with all the groups that are still fighting for it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that information. And as a third generation farmer handling the citrus growing, that had to be a devastating process to watch. Is that correct? That from the time you were a kid, they were healthy and thriving to current, and now they're largely decimated?
It's such an interesting question for me as a guy that's currently in a grove that is 1 mile from a grove that my father owns. We used to run around these groves and pick oranges off and have orange fights as kids. And it's just ironic because you see an orange on a tree now and it looks good. And you're like taking photos of it, singing songs to it, like just keep fighting. And it's a different age. It's a different age, that's for sure. It's crazy to think about.
I guess one of the follow-up questions I would have to that is, with your biochar production, do you see opportunity for different types of cash crops? You mentioned maybe growing a couple of items, but they weren't necessarily cash crop. Do you think you might have an opportunity for cash crops that allow you to stay functional and in business while we wait this
Yes.
out?
Yeah. Well, the challenge is, and on these soils, it's hard to grow anything else. Watermelons, blueberries, strawberries, it's fallow dirt, and we have to fix the soil. And then there is definitely promise. We got a lot more blueberries in the region, strawberries. The Florida Bamboo Growers Association is really starting to find its niche, developing that bamboo market, and they have gone through extensive trials too. And as we all probably know, bamboo is starting to really go from science to relative commercialization and adaptation in some product lines. And bamboo, that thing grows 20 feet in a year. So there's value there. And industrial hemp is probably going to take a couple more years just because of the political atmosphere around this plant. It's that would be a great crop to grow here too. And we're learning about new crops. We're trying new things every day. Mangoes, jatropha, some sustainable aviation fuel and biodiesel feedstocks. You can't just replace 200,000 acres with concrete, especially with farmers. They would rather sit on it and wait. My grandpa told me this when I was trying to convince him to grow hemp to make like $400 an acre in revenue. And this was a while ago. He's like, if I could sell my land for $25,000 an acre, which is the market value right now, put it into a CD and make $1,250 a year doing nothing, why would I go through the hassle of learning how to do a row crop? That generation is obviously, we're years into this thing. So the next generation, my generation, the younger generation, which I think has more of a sense of loyalty or responsibility to fix a lot of or find solutions to a lot of the current challenges that we face. They're, we're humans. We're relentless. We have a lot of grit, and I I'm still very optimistic. If anything, I have to be optimistic because we're the ones that are trying to create some of these capitalistic solutions for these environmental challenges that we're facing.
I absolutely admire the land stewardship that you've taken to heart. That is just, it's very clearly part of your core. And also the fact that you see opportunity and optimism here. So it's really fantastic. And I think it's really critical to finding those pathways towards the regeneration, the consideration that, for example, that you have and that other growers in your area have to the future generations, to bringing about soil health and the ability to feed people, heal the soil, all of that. What I want to do real quick is talk about the process for getting rid of those groves that have been impacted by it. So you mentioned earlier that you had these burn piles and then you noticed some of the hemp growing better. And now I also know, because when you were out of the truck and showing us that tree, I saw that big machine in the background. So what was it that created that transition? Tell us about the technology that you adopted and some of the decisions that led to that tech.
It doesn't matter who you are. It's a very how much money you have. The challenges of getting something like this off the ground, the risk, the unknowns. Like this is a new commodity. John, I know you're a pioneer in this thing, and I can't imagine how many arrows you have in your back from what you've gone through to get to where you're at now. Yeah. But there's a lot of I have a great team. I'm very privileged to have a group from technical to financial to scientific. Joe, he's my QCP, I call him, my quality control president. He makes sure I'm not like going down rabbit holes. And at the beginning, it's just reaching out to every technology provider. And I'm really grateful for all the technology providers and the time that they invested into teaching us to get familiar with these things. And some worked out, some didn't. Some of them are no longer available, as we probably can guess. Wyatt introduced me to a guy that had a Tiger Cat, a 2019 Tiger Cat. So we drove to Biloxi, Mississippi overnight to see this machine. And it was a good machine. It turned on, but there's some challenges with that machine. And so I was able to get Jake on the phone with Tidewater, who was selling the Tiger Cat 6040 carbonizer, the upgraded one. And he's like, you don't need to do that one. You just need to get the new one. And I was like, I'm so glad we did, because what I've learned since we got this machine is that it's not just the pyrolysis machine, it's everything else that is required to not only turn it on, which you need water trucks, you need an excavator, you need 3 or 4 people, you need to have permits, good weather. You also got to keep it on for an entire day. Oh no, like a water tank busted, this broke, excavator hydraulic line, somebody's sick, or we got a lightning strike 6 miles away. There's always something that is preventative in this industry when you get started. So that's kind of like how we got to this particular machine. Really good customer service. We have had some hiccups I can talk about if you want me to. Chest pain when you go to like some of these laws of the minimum, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, we're very, very pleased with it. I can kind of show it to you guys if you're kind of waiting on something, but
Yeah, so real quick, let's explain what Tiger Cat is as a company and what it is that they're offering. These are portable fire systems, right? They have a couple of different lines. This is the carbonator that you're using. It's the one that puts out biochar carbon. Then they have a number of other firebox systems that are simply made for waste stream mitigation. What did you experience? I know that there was a lot of materials and labor and the support equipment. Like, kind of tell us one little story maybe that you learned.
yeah, loading. First day, I got an excavator. That was probably like a 12-ton excavator. My engineers, my mechanics from Avon Park were like, let's put concrete barricades down so we don't need to spend a lot of money on a new excavator, a big one, and we'll just lift it up higher so it can see in. So this is during the 3-day demo that I have with Tiger Cat. So I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row, and we started with 12 inches of rain the night before. It was a record for May. So obviously we get out there, we're walking through water, and this tiny little excavator shows up that's probably the height of the tiger cat, and we try to get on the bricks. I got tiger cat there, Tidewater, community leaders, etc. And bless my operator's heart, he just leans that thing over and wham, right on the side of the tiger cat. And it's not even ours yet. So I was like,
What-
shut it down. I was like, I'm getting a new one. So we spent a lot of money to get a new one. Other than that, the other challenge I had the whole wrestling team out here. I was like, trying to be good for the community. I was like, just stare at the water. When the water is empty, swap the tanks. I'm on a call like this. I look and I saw my first code white, which is when what we call our oh crap moment, when coals start flying off the conveyor because the water wasn't swapped. And all these people were on TikTok or who knows what and weren't paying attention. And fortunately, my operator saved the day before hydraulic lines getting caught on fire, but our conveyor was toast. And fortunately, we had insurance. Fortunately, we learned for it. Since then, we got an extra 5,000 gallons on site. So preventative measures are pretty important, but definitely don't want to try to skate by in this. You got to be prepared and law of the minimum. Don't go for the minimum.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know, right? When you're
Right.
first coming into this industry, it's the site-based processes with those mid-tech mechanical systems. You think, oh, I'm just going to buy this box and then it's going to be great. I can use my little thing, what I have. And then, oh no, doesn't work that way. It's not quite that simple. The next thing you know, you're like mortgaging your house to buy a piece of equipment you didn't know you needed. So
That's right.
anyway, yeah. So, and the finance mechanisms, I know that they can be a little difficult. So I think that's why you brought in Wyatt and his team. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Wyatt's been great. In Florida, I will say that as a farmer, you have been told about carbon credits for a very long time, primarily with composting. A farmer like my father who manages thousands of acres, you try it out and you don't get that credit. You're spending more money expecting a return. It doesn't really happen. However, this is the most practical way. Say, all right, we're currently burning carbon. So if I put it into the soil, there has to be something. And the first conversation I had with Wyatt was through Qualterra, and we all know Qualterra is a extremely reputable professional company in Washington State. And I'm very thankful for them to connect me with Wyatt because Wyatt articulated this process and really encouraged me to pursue the citrus wood out of all the abundance of other types of feedstocks we have in Florida. And I'm happy we did it. It has brought its challenges. I'm in this sandy soil trying to move equipment, and quicksand is interesting. It creates a great story, but it also is great carbon. Like we know that for a fact now. So we're still burning trees everywhere. And if I do this the right way, we'd be able to acquire those trees, reduce the burning, collect more feedstock, and keep this citrus carbon around because, there's still 50 to 200,000 acres of it in this area. So 3 degrees has been great to work with. Very, very inspiring, like motivating in an industry that in Florida is not something that is tangible.
Yeah. So I guess one of the questions that I have in that regard is kind of the waste mitigation for the standing dead. Is that maybe your primary revenue opportunity? And then biochar and carbon credits, is that kind of the sequence, or maybe the carbon credits are generating more for you than the biochar as a material?
As of now, it's the land clearing services is our bread and butter. We've partnered with the largest citrus grower in the state, which unfortunately has closed its citrus operation. So that leaves for an abundance of feedstock, which they pay on time. You got to have more than one revenue stream than biochar, or you just got to have a lot of money and be okay not having any money in return for a couple of years to develop an industry in your region and your state. We're also doing some consulting services, myself and our science team, for remediation, biochar development projects in Florida. That's been going a lot better than we anticipated originally. And now we're going to start doing a kind of like a biochar on-site demonstration, John. We should probably talk about that on another call, where we're going to be taking a demo unit across the state to municipalities that are interested in biochar that don't want to take that large capital out to do proof of concept and development. So those are our main revenue streams right now. We're trying to diversify as much as we can.
Yeah, well, spending, $2+ million on a system for a municipality can be really difficult to justify. We did an earlier recording with Jim Doughton from Minneapolis, and he kind of shared that insight. I thought, and I mean, he's a great communicator. You could really see it in him what was causing an issue. That objective you have for outreach and education through the portability is fantastic. I think maybe I want to scooch on over a little bit to Wyatt and kind of identify what was it that when you first started talking to Zack, what did you see? What were your thoughts on how to handle your funnel, right? How is it what do you need to educate them on? So if somebody reaches out to you, what can they expect? And how would that tie into Zack's story?
Yeah, I can start with kind of how Zack and I's relationship started. We were 3 Degrees joined the biochar space about 3 years ago. We started looking at biochar as we saw demand from our corporate customers who were looking for solutions for their company climate goals. So when I joined 3 Degrees, I was tasked with kind of looking at some new project categories, and biochar was the one that stuck. Our mission's to take urgent action on climate change, and we found opportunity to do that through biochar, and both professionally and personally, biochar really stuck with me. The community that I got to be a part of, a lot of the thematic considerations about circularity. And I found Zack through other relationships and found a place that, a region that's losing, what is it, Zack, 120 acres a day or something like that to greening disease. Desperate, urgent need of intervention and solution. I met Zack, who started by sending me roadside videos of him driving through Florida of just all the carbon that was being burned, all the pile burns that were just going on throughout the state. And the thesis that Zack and I both agreed on is this is ridiculous. This is a resource. This is a regional resource, and it's just going up in smoke everywhere around the region. Talking with an initial stage project like Zack, one, it's understanding eligibility under the carbon market, what different protocols and standards are applicable to the type of technology that they're using, where they're operating, the feedstock that they're procuring. So eligibility and specifically protocol selection is a big part of the initial conversation with the project. And then also setting and understanding guardrails about what the carbon market is and what the carbon market is not, which can be where the carbon market sometimes gets a lot of its criticisms is, coming in and it's advertised as a silver bullet that's going to funnel rapid amounts of money somewhere really, really quickly. And being really clear about those guardrails and what is the timeline to actually generate a carbon credit? What does the process of going through verification look like? How often are buyers purchasing carbon credits? Is it a boom, click money type transaction, or is it long ongoing discussions to help them understand the project and potential risks? And, it's the latter. So just being really transparent about that initially with the project to be able to evaluate the opportunity of pursuing the carbon market from a realistic and pragmatic approach is super important. And so Zack and I spent a lot of time talking about that and also just brainstorming creative ways that 3 Degrees could help prior to there being carbon credits flowing and transacting. And so, I've worked with Zack now for about 2 years on this project. So we definitely see benefits in getting involved very early with projects and their development, because there's a lot that happened in between our initial conversation and the starting the biochar operation that made it a viable, feasible carbon project. And that eligibility, that due diligence, that making sure that Zack and team understand that not only do you have to put water in the biochar, you have to know how much water you're putting in the biochar. You have to meter that water. You have to collect that data point. And there might not be a natural path for doing that. That might not be automatic. It might not be already built in, right? And so thinking about key critical data points that you're going to need to run a successful carbon project and making sure that day one, you know what you need to do. You know what data points you need to control, whose responsibility it is to collect and control those data points is what really sets up and makes a successful carbon project. And I'm very fortunate to have a team on the back end of this who supports me in doing that and gets to, hop on long calls with Zack through this process and learn his operation inside and out. We joke that, some project like Eden and Serene from our project ops team, if they're ever down there on a site visit, Zack might just throw them right into the team, right? Like they know enough about the day-to-day down there to pick up a shift if they had to. It does take that level of depth and connection to a project, I think, especially on these durable carbon removal credits, which are a premium product. They sell a lot higher than what carbon credits have sold for in the past. And the level of engagement that a carbon credit buyer wants to have with this type of project requires a more detailed and thorough relationship for someone like 3 Degrees who interacts with those corporate customers and transact with those clients. It requires that depth of relationship with our projects to really deliver that level of information and clarity about the project and its benefits. And so understanding the story is a big part of that, understanding how its co-benefits can be talked about, and simultaneously planning for MRV, planning for monitoring, reporting, and verification of your carbon credits and all the data points you need to do that.
I think Zach wanted to say something here about MRV.
Definitely not that. That's more of Joe's forte, Joe and Eden and Serene. One thing I wanted to say is that when Wyatt, you like myself personally, right? I quit my job, a great job, in like 2024 to do this full time with the assumption that it'll happen quicker than it did. And the good thing about that,
I'm sorry about laughing about that.
no, I'm sure everybody can probably familiarize themselves with that. Cautious optimism, right? Well, the optimists were the first to die as prisoners of war, right? It's like, we're going to get out by Valentine's Day, and then it's Christmas, and it's the next Valentine's Day. It's like financial advisors and advisors in general who are like, what are your goals? What's your 3-6 month goal? I'm like, I'm trying to wake up tomorrow with the same amount of drive that I have today. And that's the goal. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole there because I wanted to go to Wyatt's point where we spent a year. And it wasn't just a year of us chatting. It's like Wyatt's like, hey, I need a letter of support from the largest grower in your region. Can you get that for me? And it's like, hey, where does this parcel look like? And this, that, and the other. And if you're looking at it as a have to do this versus I need to do this to build this narrative and build this process, the thing is, because of those relationships that Wyatt encouraged me to create for this whole project, when I asked for a letter of support last week for a Department of Agriculture grant, it was like that. So we were able to get this grant that we just submitted. We were able to get about 20 letters of support. And it was after years of collaboration, understanding the region's demographics and collaborators to support this regenerative ag and circular nutrient management model that we're trying to go through. And you got to have that type of passion to prove yourself and others that this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, for example, on the commercial space, folks that talk to me and they're like, yeah, we expect we'll have this launched within a year. And then it's like, no, 18 to 24 months, 18 to 24 months. And then a little while later, they're like, no, we've got this 1 year. And then they come back 2 years later. Yep, took us almost 2 years.
And that's an important, especially with where 3 Degrees sits in the space, is it's definitely one of our challenges is that we have to move projects forward with optimism and excitement, but at the same time, we have to preserve the reputation of biochar to corporate customers who want to buy these credits. And so we have to be cautious, to not show a slide deck, but like a thoughtful project, right? We have to make sure that we are doing due diligence on a project and that we really understand what's going on the ground and the realities about the timelines and potential risks so that we can bring it to the carbon market as a strong, defensible project.
So are you finding both the credit buyers and maybe are you handling a finance segment as well?
Zach's been doing most of his own financing. We've supported that a little bit at small scale with just some initial help with carbon credits. The finance part is definitely a challenge for the industry as a whole. Our primary role has been on finding buyers and about bringing this project and its specificities to buyers who are interested in biochar and who might be interested in biochar in the next couple of years, and to get this project on their radar so that they can think about their procurement strategy for carbon removals and how this project can help them with that.
So I have a question for you, Wyatt, because this is something that kind of pesters me a bit. What is it? Consternation, right?
Yeah.
So we tend to have a much better market for the carbon credits. People are really interested in that mechanism and how it can be as an asset, or the fact that they can retire them quickly in order to achieve the desired goals. However, what is it that they can do to help with the go-to-market strategy to actually get that biochar implemented in the ground? So 3 degrees from your perspective, when you're helping these folks get off the ground, what are you doing in terms of marketing? And then the follow-up question is, besides the education to your producer, are you educating the carbon credit buyer? Because a lot of those folks will have portfolios and holdings where they could actually utilize the physical material.
Absolutely, yeah. Talking about the co-benefits of biochar as it applies regionally, especially, has been huge. Getting buyers excited about that, I think, is very important. As Zack mentioned, also some of the broader relationship building that we talked about and encouraging those relationships to be set up is important. Buyers also recognize that the biochar not being carbon credit buyers, that is, recognize that there is a risk to committing to a biochar project if it can't find a home for its biochar. You will not get carbon credits if you don't find a home for your biochar. And there's 2 ways that can be supported. John, you make a great point about engaging with physical buyers who might also be carbon credit buyers, and that's one great avenue that we can explore and have some success exploring in early stage conversations. The other is framing one of the key concepts of a carbon market purchase that makes a buyer excited about a project is the additionality claim. How does their purchase of the carbon credits support the growth and the sustainability of the project? That's a core function of the carbon market, is to do additional carbon action. And talking to a buyer about the project economics, saying, hey, your commitment to this price, we're not asking you for this credit price because it's the market rate. We're asking you for this credit price because here's a snapshot of the project economics. Here are the types of companies it can deliver and sell its biochar, and here's how much money it can make doing that. Here's why it needs carbon credits to fill that gap. And so bringing that conversation front and center can be the difference of a project just trying to take what it can get in the carbon market and a project aligning its physical offtake revenue with its carbon credit revenue. And so we can talk to a buyer and we can say, hey, Zack's able to get land clearing revenue, and here's the rate he's able to sell some of that biochar for through this project. This is the delta that we need to make the project viable. And that's how we're talking about carbon credit price and how it unlocks physical markets for buyers. And so part of that is the pre-work of working with Zack to understand who those buyers are, encouraging and nurturing the relationships to grow the physical industry, in conjunction with getting buyers educated about where the constraints are in the physical industry and how carbon financing and carbon credit purchase can unlock different end use streams for different products. And most of what we've done has been in the latter, is really tying real grounded project opportunities to the available price point that they can achieve in the carbon market.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. I think we have a lot of opportunity to keep building the larger industry, and so we can find ways to support groups like Zack's. Real quick, I know that you're also, one of the things that we talked about earlier in another conversation is that in the short time that you've been working in this carbon space, especially the place-based, you've dealt with 40 different projects. Is that right?
Yeah, 40 plus for sure.
Nice.
I use a customer management software to just track all the conversations that I have with people. And, I think to date have engaged with over 70 biochar project developers. I'm actively working with about 30 projects. About 7 of those are making biochar, and the rest of them are close to making biochar. And it's a tough market, and we don't necessarily always end up working with every project we engage with for the life of the project. But I still appreciate getting to be a part of their early stage journey through carbon credits. And, maybe that's a couple weeks of back and forth and calls and, a site visit, maybe, going out and learning about their operation, flying or driving out there to help them understand this market. And we really think about the work that we do as collaborative. And so when I'm doing that, I'm looking to find partnerships. I'm looking to find partnerships of groups that the way we work and the way that they work is going to work well in harmony, and to form long-term relationships with those partners. So yeah, I've got to talk to a lot of people in this biochar space, and the community is one of the main things that keeps me here. It's a source of climate optimism for me to engage with these people who oftentimes are not your stereotypical heavily involved in climate change efforts. You talk about farmers, lumber mill operators, and seeing seeing urgent climate action happening across those types of different groups of people, I think is a real good source of climate optimism for me. And I'm excited to continue to get to engage with all these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. The sense of community, the friendships that you can develop, the fact that a lot of the industry is on the commercial and place-based processes, they tend to be open to sharing information. Some protected a little bit, but by and large, we have a really fantastic community. On the political side, we tend to be running a little purple, right? We have bipartisan support. Zach's already mentioned that he's had some really great support on the policy side, and the fact that the local economy or the local lawmakers have it so that way if you clear the land, they're supporting you by not charging you the higher tax rate. So I expect that we'll see more of that in years to come. Wyatt, I know that you currently have 4 primary place-based projects underway, and that my understanding is that you're using both the CAR, Climate Action Reserve protocol, and Vera.
Yeah, right now our projects are on the Climate Action Reserve, the CAR Biochar protocol. We have the first 4 projects that were listed under that protocol we brought. We selected CAR at the time. CAR had published a new methodology that we thought was really favorable to accurately account for how these types of operations worked. A lot of the nuances of how the different protocols calculate and prove the carbon storage claim come down to what types of data points they use. And the one thing that CAR did in a way that we really appreciated and found applicable to this project is the core calculation was really based around a defined sampling protocol for the physical material. So that helped with mobile equipment like what Zach was using, because it became less about measuring pyrolysis temperatures, less about like sensors on a stationary unit where you have lots of flow meters, lots of control, and instead focus more heavily on what was in the biochar. Once you made the biochar, how much carbon is in that biochar?
Mm-hmm.
And let's set up a credit mechanism that's heavily focused on that. Still obviously considers the technology, potential emissions from the technology. That's all still considered, but the primary data points align well with this type of operation. So we selected that protocol and started doing the initial work to get this project registered. This project is registered on the Climate Action Reserve protocol. It is an officially listed project there. And we continue to work with the Climate Action Reserve. One of our, other unofficial roles is the voice of industry role. So talking with people who are developing these credit protocols about, hey, this is what we're seeing on the ground. This is the challenge. This is our proposed solution that we believe aligns with your protocol. Do you agree? Let's have a conversation about it. And let's have a conversation about how we got to that assessment and why it's impactful to have a successful project. And that voice of industry function, I think, is a very important function that in order for carbon protocols to continue and evolve, like we need people who are on the ground operating biochar projects to have their voice present in those decisions that are made about how these protocols work, what data points are required, what data points can be estimated or modeled based on consensus in the academic community, and finding a balance that creates a very defensible and robust carbon credit, but is pragmatic to on-the-ground biochar producers and has a path to success for them, a realistic path to success for them.
Hey, kudos to you and your team at 3 Degrees for working on that. That type of input is absolutely critical to the growth and success of the industries. Thank you so much for that. I guess I have another question about those carbon credits. If somebody wants to help Zach's project out, how would I go about buying credits? Is there a minimum purchase on Zach's credits, or do I have to buy bulk, or where do I buy them? How?
Generally speaking, there's flexibility. So always reach out. Feel free to reach out to myself or Zach, and we'll start the conversation there. There's always flexibility.
We'll give you a discount.
It's
use
like
code.
I was gonna say, any podcast you listen to now, right? Use code this for
Biochar Show, or
yeah.
Nice. So I know, Zach, in your early days, Zach and Wyatt, you both attended the 2024 North American Biochar Conference. And I learned that at one point, in order to try and figure out what was going on inside the Tiger Cat, that you had a piece of equipment that maybe you held over the heat for a little too long, or
Yeah,
can you tell us about that?
I attached a GoPro to my excavator, and it might have been 10 minutes. And I was just saying, where'd my GoPro go? And probably a week later, literally a week later, I'm like going through the char, and there it was, just completely disintegrated. Yeah, Wyatt and the team got me a new GoPro. I got it in my car somewhere.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, for my birthday, and I want to get. I was actually on a call with my marketing team today. I got a new intern. He's 19, and he's trying to explain to me like I'm like 100 years old how we need more content on our job site, and it's like we're really close to being able to fully optimize it. It's been challenging to get the equipment through financing and credit, and then the equipment shows up and it doesn't have the attachments or it doesn't work right as it's brand new equipment. So once I get all that there, I want it to be a fun environment that we could highlight to others. We are in conversation with a very well-known director of a movie that was about biochar in 2018, and he knows about the project, and it would be cool to highlight this story, not so for like myself, but for like the guys on the ground, like they all got kids, they all got families, they need this job, and we need to kind of let others know, like, you can do it. It's going to cost a lot of money at the beginning, but there's obviously hope for us to have a call like this, and for Wyatt and his team to sacrifice days of time, putting together our process. And I got to say, when you're going for carbon credits, there's a lot of groups out there that might do it for a minuscule percent, but when they do that, they're not doing anything else. And in my head, if I had $1 million, I still would not have any clue how to really go through it, because you're going to need a whole team. 3 degrees, every call we have. Fortunately, I have a team now too, but at one point it was me. I want to say against, but it's like me with 5 or 6 people that are just like honing in. I was like, I got to get somebody on my team for this. So, but that's what's led us to having a tangible product to sell, and not just another white, piece of paper that says all this beautification stuff. Like we're really close to executing on that. We did our 10-day trial, and we got to get our scale fixed, which was supposed to be on the excavator. The excavator comes without a scale. So once we get that scale, we'll be able to weigh it, the amount that we've done over the 10 days, and should be hearing next soon.
Yeah. So you brought up an important point. I love biochar jobs. You love biochar jobs. Wyatt loves biochar jobs. We all love biochar jobs. So let's talk about your staffing. As you went through this transition with the dramatic loss of the citrus groves, what was your staff like before to where it is now? And then how many jobs is the biochar segment supporting right now?
That's to me, that's the biggest, impact, is how do we bring money into this community? Massive displacement right now. If you are selling your land and turning it into housing, I think it's like 2 jobs per acre. And we have 2,000 employees in citrus in my county, so probably 10,000 in the county around. I've witnessed my father's company's produce in this company go under. 70. He had to let go of 75 people. That is something that's across this region. The best thing about where I'm at right now is that I can get another excavator guy. I put a job out today for a foreman. I don't know how many jobs. I had to shut off my notifications, and we have 8 full-time employees. So we went from 0 to 8 in 4 or 5 months. 6 of them are all operators on the ground. We have a partnership with the Career Source in this region to work on getting some certifications. A Career Source in any community in Florida will do a 50% match reimbursement. So if it costs $5,000 to get a CDL, they'll cover the other half. Now you have a CDL driver, Now you have OSHA certified employees. There's a lot of grants and opportunities to utilize, to not just utilize these people, but not just give them a job, but give them a career where they are leveling up each day too. Because I consistently have to tell the guys that you're the pioneers. Like, this won't work if you guys don't do your job. And every day, their job, it's not like we're playing football. One day they got a football helmet on. Next thing you know, they're ice skating, like cleaning up stuff. They've been they're driven, they're committed. They know there's value in this black gold that's spitting out. And there's, our goal next year is to get at least one more machine, hopefully two. And we'll have 30 people on our workforce. Speaking to a senator before this call, trying to get some appropriation dollars. Yeah, his main question was, is it sustainable? I know about biochar. I know it could help water, but is it sustainable? And the answer is yes, as long as you have that vision that it will be, because otherwise, what are we going to do? In the past 5 years, I've tried other things, SAF fuel, Jatropha, hemp. It hasn't come to fruition, but all that's happened is the economy is still tanking. Nothing else has come to save us. And if we can collaborate, which takes time and trust, without making urgent mistakes, like if you're back against a wall and going down a rabbit hole and it ultimately leading to a mistake, like going slow is smooth is fast, and developing those trustworthy relationships with the community so that if you do need to hire somebody, you have somebody that day. And I got a very long list, and just trying to keep them patient as we, because you got to get the sales, and you got to make the buy.
Yeah. And your team has to show up every day, and for you, your team is not only your staff, but it's also 3 degrees. So in terms of working together to move more from a one-off situation to a fleet, how are you two working together?
So yeah, I think, while Zach's role has been really definitely focused on the ground and keeping things running. I mean, Zach is also the architect of this project and building those relationships. I think it's a good time to call out. Zach has done a phenomenal job building community relationships. This project is where it is because Zach has literally door knocked, literally canvassed and phone called hundreds of people in the area to get this to happen and to find offtake partners for biochar, both at, small volumes of biochar, but also to pave the road to have bigger offtakes so that when there is a fleet of biochar reactors in the region, that there is offtake and buyers for that physical material, users of that physical material, ways to put it back into Florida soil. That's all gone into this. And so where we're at in the arc of this story is that, now that this project has become real, right? It's learning how it can generate credits based on actual biochar that's being produced, tested, quantified, data is being collected. We move into this engaging the carbon markets and finding buyers and finding a strong revenue stream here to allow this project to scale. Obviously those are confidential conversations, but there is progress there. And this is a category of products that buyers are interested in. And we're really excited and optimistic about how that is the next lever to unlock, the idea is that do this with one unit, make it work, perfect the system, and then scale it. And we're at that perfecting the system step. And concurrently, we're building the tracks for the scale it step.
Okay, so one question that I have for you in terms of perfecting, is there a point where good enough is good enough? And then in terms of risk diversification, if you have a fleet of 3 or 4 machines, seems a lot safer from maybe Zach, from your perspective as a business owner. If one of those machines is down, it's not putting you out. It's not making it so you're coming up with money out of pocket to make payroll. Is that what kind of conversations and thoughts do you have around that?
It's, two sides of a coin. The first side is if I have 3 machines, I am never going to have sleep. And it's going, holy crap, the thought of it. But just get a format. The trust is in the people. I tell the team, and there's 4 P's to a business, right? You got the purpose. The purpose is the foundation. The purpose is never going to go away. Then you got the project, which leads to the purpose. Then you got the process, which ultimately supports the project. And then you got the people. People, if they're not into the purpose, the mission, those people, they're not going to stay. They got too many other things going on. But the right people to support the right process and the right project will help spur the purpose of that mission. And so, yeah, you got to have the right team. Definitely want to make sure you have that right team before you get started, or else you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking. And if you think you can do it yourself, which is something that I was kind of speculating, like, I don't need a foreman or a production manager. These guys will be able to figure it out themselves. But football players need coaches. Coaches need GMs. GMs need owners. And you got to have a sense of delegation in order to maximize that, because there's nothing worse than downtime. And you hear it, everybody understands that. However, when it happens, there is nothing worse than downtime. Now, we've had weeks where we have not been able to operate for one thing or another, and you can kind of feel it eating at your soul. And then, like, that first day when it's back on, it's like, okay, like, it's okay now. And having 3 machines, we could be able to go to different sites in different regions, acquire different employees, service different municipalities if we're going down that route, or the ag route, because one machine isn't going to be able to. We were doing some math. If I wanted to do a 90-10 split compost biochar, in 1 month, I would be able to provide 250 acres worth of biochar, I think at 6 tons per acre. That's nothing. So how do you maximize that? You get more employees, have more shifts. I have to be doing my politicking to make sure that we can get approved to burn at night. We tried it. It's an awesome looking machine at nighttime, but how, if forestry would have drove by, I don't know what they would have said, seeing a 43-ton box with, beautiful fireworks coming off the top. So, there's you got to have those steps in place and that vision to understand what step has to come first. And every market is different, which is why we've been privileged to be able to communicate with other biochar businesses that are trying to get started with our team and our experiences, because success is inevitable if you don't care who gets the credit. Harry Truman said that. I would love some competition. I would love for somebody else in this region to win and start selling biochar. Then the Jones effect happens, because nobody's going to be able to supply the whole market, every market, So that's a long-winded answer, but I don't know if I need to backtrack.
No, that was a fantastic answer. Wyatt, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think just kind of tying that in and segueing back to your initial conversation about risk, I think, I'm obviously here representing our perspective from the carbon market side of it. So there's certainly, as you talked about, risk mitigation by a fleet opportunity for Zack, having redundancies. The carbon market is also in a transitionary phase. Historically, 3 Degrees, we've been in this space for a long time. Historically, a lot of carbon deals are, you go do the carbon project, you get credits, and then you start selling the credits. And a lot of buyers are used to buying off-the-shelf carbon credits, projects that have already gone through verification, already gone through issuance. And with the revenues, price, and considerations for stronger additionality claims, we're transitioning to a market that has to think about purchasing biochar credits in future. And so now the buyers for the carbon credits for the first time are starting to really think about deliverability risk. What is the risk that if I commit to a project that it's not going to deliver carbon credits? And so this opportunity of, making purchase commitments to scale biochar operations, it de-risks it on both sides. It de-risks it for Zack on the ground to have redundancy in his processes and systems, but it also de-risks it for a buyer who's made 2030 commitments to purchase carbon removals or 2035 commitments to purchase carbon removal. And being transparent about that and being honest about the reason we're looking at offtake commitments is to help mitigate those risks and to build more financially stable projects is a very important piece of the story for the carbon market right now. A lot of biochar credits have been transacted in this future commitment to buy approach. I think Supercritical reported that of 2025, that's up to almost 90% or above 90% of the biochar credits that have traded have been done so with some level of, hey, I'm committing to a future biochar credit that you will deliver me. And that requires a level of relationship to the project that, historically a lot of carbon projects haven't gotten that close, but more of a disconnect. It's really cool to actually sit in that space between the project and the potential buyers to bring both parties to the table and make it a partnership, make it a success, make the carbon markets a long-term a long-term play for both the claims that companies want to make about how they're making positive impact and making positive impact on the ground and making it sustainable. And you can't get more additional and more high impact than doing that in the carbon market. So I think biochar provides an excellent opportunity for credit buyers to have that kind of impact, to have that kind of real measured impact, and they get to de-risk it along the way because they get to be a part of it. And it has the opportunity to be a big win-win for everybody. And we just got to keep driving those conversations.
Yeah. And in terms of protecting those projects, you have that opportunity, especially Zack and other place-based and commercial producers, to make that claim that, hey, we are helping you to decarbonize your supply chain. I do consulting and I work with folks. And one of the first things we do is we look at the upline and say, hey, in order to close those deals, we have people that we're making the carbon, we're capturing the carbon, we're selling the carbon credits. And if you use us for your waste mitigation, your thermal processing, the heat that you might need, the energy production, we are helping you to decarbonize your supply chain. So that gives you a leg up on the other folks. And then it also shows the contribution that they're making by supporting you through engaging you. So Zack, I have a question, and Wyatt, you might have an answer on some input on this as well, is that you're in the middle of it, Zack. You have thousands of acres around you. You talked about the compost with biochar blend and how you could do a couple hundred acres of the blended material, and that's barely a drop in the bucket. I know that we have some federal programs. We have Code 336, the Soil Carbon Amendment from the USDA and RCS. And then we also have Code 384. 336 is a cost share program that allows farmers, agricultural producers to install biochar in their soils. So they'll work with their local agent to determine how much they can put in the soils and then go through that process and get that in the soils. Code 384 allows property owners to handle the conversion of existing woody biomass into biochar. And frankly, that's often a lot easier to get than the 336 program because it takes a little less total involvement from either your technical service provider or you're an RCS agent. But have you been looking into that at all as an additional revenue pathway or sales pathway?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we'll take any pathway for revenue generation. That one in particular, though, its challenges in this region are you only have one agent in an agriculture community, and it's the same type of, you got to thread the needle. And we in our region with 336, one of a reputable consultant who does this for different farmers, I think she did 17 applications last year and was 0 for 17. So I'm fortunately working with Tara at the United States Biochar Initiative. I haven't had as much time as I'd like recently, but I am trying to thread that needle with the USDA in Florida. And we're kind of doing that right now. Like we're doing biochar, and we have given, before we've done our carbon credit monitoring while we're still getting ramped up, we've given tons of material away to just to prove it, And it's like, I'd rather take it up the road to, Florida Bamboo Growers Association. And we've done some demos too. So we've done demos. Well, we're doing exactly what USDA 336 is intended for. We just got to get to that right person. We recently submitted a proposal for the Department of Ag, Office of Ag Water Policy, where we would make biochar, drive it down the road to a lake. There's 500 lakes in this county, Polk County, and we would deploy it in the lakes, take it out of the lakes, of course, do some testing, put it back in the soil. University of Florida is going to be doing soil monitoring, and it's a 3-year project. And my hope, or my personal piece in that project, and it's a very large collaborative project, is I want to make sure that we can provide enough information to give FDACS peace of mind to where it is a BMP cost share over that 3-year term. And it's in my mind, it's already happened. Time just hasn't caught up yet. And it's the same thing with the Soil Amendment Code, which is why we did this as a nonprofit, is to partner with the state or the federal government, be a good steward of taxpayer dollars to support that tax-paying community. And Florida's a show-me state. Before you get money from the state, you got to show them that you're doing stuff. And I'm hoping that by next year, we can kind of get some of these opportunities done to where we can be a good partner with the farmers to help them get the money that is available that they might not know is or might think is too hard to not worth their time, even though 336 says in Florida we could be making $1,700 per acre with 4 yards per acre of application. It says it. I don't know anybody who's had that happen yet. So we're trying to thread a needle there and meet with the right people to make that's the game changer for at least this region is that type of cost share.
Yeah, it's all about the prescriptive process there, and it can be very difficult. I do want to make a personal plea to anybody that's listening to this or watching the show on YouTube. If you are in the soil sector, if you are in agronomy, please consider becoming a technical service provider. The USDA, they need more of these. We need more of these. We need more of you. Get committed to this. There are areas that you can be a TSP that you might make a little bit more money, but I promise you, working with Biochar just makes you feel good. So please consider joining that program. And then you mentioned Tara over at USBI. I absolutely am very impressed with the work that she's been doing, and I look forward to years of success coming from that program with her involvement. I know they have some train the trainer type programs coming up on the near horizon, and the development of BMPs is something that they've mentioned being very committed to, like at the conference. So BMPs are going to give us, from a producer standpoint, we have the capacity to make sure we're meeting criteria, right? Because biochar is so highly configurable that we can make it according to what the customer needs are. And then the instructions that come with BMP, the support that comes for alternate industries that would work with us and work with our carbon, the fact that they could now go in on their program and click the button, we want to use biochar, and then it would come up with a prescription that says, okay, this is the amount of yardage that you can use, stormwater, runoff, nutrient retention, like all of these opportunities. Truly believe that those are very near term for us. That's one of the things that's giving me a lot of optimism. So yeah, I'm sure we kind of all share that same optimism around this. So
Absolutely.
Zach, I think I one of the questions, because earlier you mentioned the fact that if you invest in greenhouses, you can just see it all blown away, right? You have a hurricane blow through, your investment is just gone. With the fact that the Tiger Cat and other types of air curtain carbonizers that they're portable, have you thought about maybe working within the construct of FEMA and their recovery processes?
Yes, we are a partner for a FEMA subcontractor, as a few actually. When we first started, we were getting a lot of inquiries from different FEMA subcontractors. Naturally, the year I started a biochar company to support FEMA, we don't have a hurricane in Florida. So it's okay,
Yeah.
which is, don't get me wrong, it's being a Floridian, it's a blessing that we don't have hurricanes. I mean, there was 120,000 yards, 120,000 tons of biochar, of wood waste at one location from one city that is currently rotting. The methane, it's been since 2022, and you just got to get the right technology. But that's definitely something that we're not just considering, we are a part of it, and took the risk to add the additional insurance so that we can be that subcontractor for a number of these groups. And a lot of the groups are understanding it. You can either ship and haul. I think 1 acre is 700 yards of wood chips. In Florida, average, just use that as an example. So you can either haul that out for $3 a yard, or you can haul out, 100 yards of biochar. You're reducing your hauling costs, and you're making what, 10 times the amount per yard. So it's starting to become a thing, and fortunately, we don't need to have a hurricane to partner with these groups, because there's wood from hurricanes from 2 or 3 years ago that are still everywhere. And we're also clearing 120 acres a day, and that needs to go somewhere too. And the wood market in Florida is saturated. The chip market is saturated, and let people know that we will help you build your own biochar company and consult with you to do that if you do intend to come to Florida and take some of the wood.
Yeah, and some of the advantages is that you decarbonize the post-disaster recovery process, because now you can take dimensional material rather than having to shred it or chip it and then have difficulty getting rid of that. You take the dimensional material, you slap it in, get it to process quickly, save that carbon, less man hours, less pollution. I know that the Tiger Cat, they tend to be pretty efficient on the amount of diesel they take per hour in order to run. Yeah, that's a win-win for the environment. It's a win-win for jobs, and it's a win-win for business operators that can capitalize on that. And then also for the municipalities, because next thing you know, they can have something that's nearby, getting rid of the material that's on their streets and generating benefit for the taxpayer.
And John, this is also a really cool part of the what I'd call like evolution of carbon accounting approaches that this project also is leading. And one of these considerations is like, okay, how do you keep your carbon credit estimations and your quantifications consistent if you're using different feedstocks? And so, there's solutions to that, right? There's creating different baselines for different feedstocks, and how do you draw operational scope of work boundaries so that you can quantify feedstock from future hurricane and storm debris differently than you quantify the feedstock for the citrus, and design processes that allow both to be options without confusing or muddling the carbon accounting. And so that's part of the evolution and part of the work that's being done for this project that I find really cool from a carbon accounting perspective. And how do you make pragmatic adoptions of carbon protocols to capture those sorts of nuances in the project?
Absolutely. Zach, one of the questions I do have for you back on the FEMA side is that there's a group that I work with, Biochar on site. I'm the development director for this. These, hey, everybody, they're put it on. And one of the things that we've been talking about is in the place-based processes and the mid-tech in particular, is that one of our concerns is that maybe the auditors don't know how to understand when they're going in to validate what has happened. So, we have one of our first stack sheets is on flame cap kilns and explains what it is and talks about emissions and their efficiencies. But one of our objectives eventually, as we can make it happen, is to have fact sheets dedicated to auditors. So again, our industry is young, it's growing, it's getting a better and better, more predictable supply for the physical material, more predictable supply for the carbon credits. And now it's those BMPs, it's finding ways to fit within the systems. And that is just going to continue to deliver confidence. So I do want to honor your time. I know that we're getting to the point where we're running a little bit long. Let's see. Let's do a couple of things. One is I want to find out what it is that really gives you kind of optimism over the next 2 years on both a personal and professional level related to biochar. And then we'll kind of wrap up after that. Zach, you want to take it first?
Optimism. I would say, I'm all in. I think we mentioned at the beginning of the call, it's like I put most of the stuff I own into the credit backing to make sure this thing is sustainable and we hit payroll weekly. We've not missed a payroll as we've developed the market. The finalization of our grant last week, reviewing the letters of support, the collaboration between municipal, state, university, research, engagement with the employee workforce, departments. That's a big piece. And the other piece is I will never forget, it was January 6th of this year. A family member was like, you need to get a job, you need to work for somebody. And this was in the morning. I was upset. That night, I find out that the largest citrus grower in the state of Florida closed its doors. 240 people showed up to work. 240 people were told to go home. And that same family member was like, you got to do something about this. Since then, he's also been like, you need to get another job. Like, what are you doing with all this? You are spending so much money every day. But at the end of the day, you just gotta, if you're doing something like this, especially in biochar, you're a magnet. You attract the things. And I would say that you gotta be You got to be a coffee bean. You put a coffee bean in hot water, it turns it into coffee. You can't be an egg where you put an egg into hot water, it makes the egg soft, or a carrot. So you got to be able to have that positive mindset. And if you think good thoughts and do good things and you work hard, good things will eventually come to you. It's not on your time. It's whether you call it the universe or God or whatever you may say, but it's, when you're out here in an orange grove, you don't have much around other than God and God's creation. And just got to remember like why you started. And we are very proud of the team that has put up with me over the last 4 months. I'm very proud of all of them, the new people we've had on, the conversations I have with 3 degrees every time are always a blessing. It could be a bad day and they're all positive and supportive and granulizing ways to improve the process for us to make a substantial more money per ton produced without us having to really do anything different. And that's a beautiful thing, knowing that we can get paid to pull carbon and store it for the next generation and the one to come after that. So, that's kind of it with me. It's like, do good thoughts, do good things, work hard, and one day at a time, and cherish the small wins. Small things add up.
Yeah, Zach, you're an inspiration, man. Thank you very much. You're doing important work. All right, Wyatt, how about you, buddy?
Yeah, I'll circle back. I said it earlier. I think, this is a source of climate optimism for me because of the people. It says a lot. I mean, I'll start by acknowledging that this is a transition. We're in a climate transition. We're transitioning. We're testing things. We're figuring out ways to do things better. And that's not always a smooth ride. We joke that carbon is the wild west of markets, of commodity markets, right? Of traditional trading and financing. It's a wild west because everything is new all the time. That's exciting. And I think my biggest evidence for optimism here is that despite, as we talked about before, people from different political backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, globally, different levels of knowledge about a system, we're finding ways to make it work. The people in the biochar community are finding ways to make it work. I went to the Biochar Summit this year. I went to the one the year before, and just the difference in energy, the difference in size, the watching a community move from mostly hobbyist with some people doing it as a career to witnessing it become an industry, witnessing people developing at scale, companies deploying large amounts of capital to support projects. And we're in that transition, right? We're caught in that. And so there is the negativity, right? There are the bumps, there are the hurdles, there are the learnings, there is the confusion, there's the pushing against the status quo. But despite that, the people in the community have found a way to make it happen. That is a great source of climate optimism.
Absolutely. And Wyatt, thank you and your team. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I wish you great success. I know that I'll continue to give you referrals. And Zach, Zach does come to our monthly Biochar on site meetings. That's a place where we do technical presentations and then a Q&A for the community. We're sharing everything that's new in the space from low tech to mid tech, and everybody there, they're all champions as well. They're all deeply committed. Some of them, it's all about resilience, land stewardship. Some it's about carbon management, filtration, any number of things. Let's fix the lakes. Let's fix the cropping systems. And then others are in it just, frankly, Wyatt, like you're saying, for the climate objectives. So everybody has their own personal reasons. We have a fantastic and growing industry. And again, you're right, Wyatt, enthusiast to industry. We have this industry. There's never been a better time to get into it. So anybody that's out there that's thinking about this, I want to urge you to join us, because soil science, fire sciences, honoring the watershed, fireshed, airshed, building healthy soils, it's all in for everybody. And when you work in this industry, sometimes you get to spend the day where you do a couple of really cool things. You get to play with fire, and then you get to play in the dirt, right? And build those soils. So how does it get any better? So, all right, what I'm going to do is I want to wrap this up real quick. And then Zach, I'm hoping as we roll out that maybe once we do a little bit of this, that you could walk out and give us an overview of your system real quick. That would be fantastic. So, Zach and Wyatt, thank you so much for joining our program today. This has been such an insightful conversation. I know that this will help our listeners have a lot of inspiration and thoughts on how to follow a similar paths and projects. So for anyone who wants to connect with you or your work and follow along with what you're doing and your progress, and maybe Zach, how to buy some of your carbon credits, or Wyatt, how to engage you in projects, I do want to say that both of their information will be included in the show notes, but both of you, if you could let us know your LinkedIn profiles and maybe how to connect by email. Wyatt, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can just find me, Wyatt Catron. You'll probably see, if you're in the Biochar space, you'll see mutual connections. I try to friend everyone in the space that I meet so that I get exposed to all the content that I can. And my email will be in the show notes. So I'm happy to reach out by email. And then I want to learn more about your Biochar projects and see if there's a way that we can have a mutually beneficial partnership there.
Fantastic. And Zach, how do folks find you?
You can www.biotechappliedresearch.org. I'm sure my email will be in the notes as well. And I'll say that we started our first Kickstarter. So for anybody that wants a quart of biochar that is activated with worm castings or a cool bar hat, once we win the Kickstarter, we're going to be doing a raised bed garden at our local FFA chapter. And then I'm sure my cell phone is also on the website as well. I'm in Instagram, Biochar, LinkedIn, Zack Farr. It's anything you can do to contact me. If you call me, and if I don't know your number, I'm probably on the job site, but if you want to shoot me a text, I will get back to you.
All right. So big thanks again to Zach and Wyatt, and we'll see you again soon on the Biochar Show. And to our listeners, thank you for your participation today. The best way to support the Biochar Show, which is produced and supported by Biochar today, is by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. And when you do hit YouTube, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe and add your supportive comments to continue the conversation below. And don't forget to leave us the 5-star reviews on all the platforms. Again, my name's John Webster. I have a company called Go Biochar, and I've been in this industry for a number of years. We are always looking for new opportunities and new engagement, more exciting, insightful communications like this, and have a discussion. So if you know somebody, or if you are interested in being on this program, reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to the Biochar Today team. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And then what we're going to do now is, Zach, if you don't mind, go take us out and let us see a little bit about this machine.
My excavator guy's daughter is in a softball tournament today, so we just shut down, but you can still see.
That's okay. Yeah. Let's point it at the machine so people can get an idea for the size.
Wi-Fi will let me go all the way there, but here's our feedstock. We're still spitting out char. It's probably, that's a pretty big pile. I mean, if you compare it to the loader. And yeah, we just moved sites, so there's a lot of quicksand to move all the material around in, and I guess I could try to go as far as I can until my Wi-Fi router kind of.
How much feedstock is that?
I'd say a lot. Probably we can go through an acre an hour, so 10, 15 tons. This is probably, and you can see where.
Yeah, so that's what we were talking about with the dimensional materials. It saves on equipment, time, and labor. Nice. That looks like you got a nice 12 yards there, maybe. That's a pretty good pile.
Yeah, it's not bad we're figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
We got no choice.
Good job. Yeah. And you know what? This is the future. This is really the future of land management and material handling. And more we're going to see these systems come up and the opportunity presented. So, hey, Zach, Wyatt, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed our time together today. And all right, everybody, let's give a little wave. All right.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thanks to John for putting this together and leading this effort.
And Biochar Today. All right, everybody.
Biochar Today.
Biochar Today.
Thanks.